Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Education Lady podcast and our new Thursday specials, various segments throughout the month. We're going to be right back with our very first segment in this particular Thursday series. But first, we always want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, if you listen to the podcast for a long time, you know I only have sponsors of companies that I used as an athletic director. Now, these are all great companies, and I highly recommend that you check them out. So don't hit that fast forward button. Take the next 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our interview, then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be very glad you did. All right, here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. And if it's more support, more security, or more customization, the Hometown team is here to help you make the best solution for online ticketing. Go to hometownticketing.com. Mention the podcast. They'll give you a nice discount. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio University, but my assistant AD did, along with thousands of others, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're completing your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. For more information, just go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters in Athletic Administration. We want to thank our good friends Ed Gipper. You know, your students are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will have you creating world-class content in seconds, whether it's a social media post about a game or a newsletter that promotes your entire program. You really need to check out that app, the newsletter app on Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Mention the podcast. It's Gipper.com. We also want to say thank you to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the events, or show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's also a great way to showcase your school's unique history and brag a little bit about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. We'd like to say thank you to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results. Their student athlete eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. To get signed up, just go to homecampus.com. That's it. And it doesn't matter if your state uses this platform or not. You can use it as an individual AD. Go to homecampus.com for more information. We want to thank our good friends at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that only wants to complain. Now, athletic surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the stakeholders that support your program. And typically, that's about 95%. And having that data, that positive feedback, is incredibly valuable, especially when you're talking with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. athleticsurveys.com. We want to say thank you to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with great success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We want to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made. go to sidelineinteractive.com. That's sidelineinteractive.com. And we want to thank Huddle. You've heard me say before, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years. When I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes love the videos, and our parents love the streaming, but there is so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. Check them out today. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast and part of our new Thursday series with some professionals from different areas of the world of athletics. We're very excited. I want to welcome back a previous podcast guest, Cari Wood. If you've listened to the podcast this year, you'll remember Cari's episode. Cari's a longtime athletic trainer in the Oregon high school system, primarily at Redmond High School, sort of in the Bend area, has a tremendous background in athletics, in athletic training. And oh, by the way, she was inducted this summer into the National Athletic Trainers Hall of Fame. Cari series is going to be about once a month, and she's going to be talking about all things in the training room. So, Cari Wood, welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thank you. And I hope that I have some information that will be helpful for ADs and athletic trainers out there that we kind of talked about. Some will be how we can support each other in our professions, and some today is more some geeky stuff that I know that it's informational stuff that I came across, and I think that a lot of ADs would be interested in this information as well. So I'm just kind of passing along some information today that I just learned, and it's something that I would go to work and talk to my AD about. Hey, I just read this. Isn't this cool? And so I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy it as well.
Oh, no, absolutely. And for our listeners, Cari and I were talking ahead of time, obviously. We're recording this on November 19th. So it's going to be pretty timely when you're listening to it. Right now, regular season football is over. We're into the playoffs. Some teams are already at that finals level. In Oregon, I know you got a couple more weeks. Same thing here in Florida. But what do you have for us this week on the training room on the Educational AD Podcast?
Okay, so most of this is geared toward football, but there is some stuff that will also could be related to all sports and preseason training and stuff like that. But I just watched a presentation for athletic trainers, and it was an update from the NFL Chief Medical Officer, and they kind of the three things that I want to relay to you guys today that I thought would be helpful is some injury prevention stuff through training camps, um, concussions and where they stand, and helmets and what we can look at for helmets. And then I know that there's always this ongoing discussion about guardian caps and are they worth it? Are they not? And so I have some updated information on that. And some that, I'm kind of thinking as athletic directors, when you sit down with your football coaches for postseason evals or talk about, maybe there's some ordering things that you're going to look at for next season, but I'm hoping this postseason might be helpful for some things between athletic directors and football coaches. And also, like I said, the training camp will go toward all sorts of coaches. But basically, so just some information that I thought was interesting. The most common injury right now in the NFL is lower leg strains, which you wouldn't really think of that, but it's strains are muscular and tendon injuries. So anything in the leg, quads, hamstring strains, groin. I think Achilles tears would probably fit into there. I know we've seen a lot of those, which is random. Second on the list, ACL tears, and concussions aren't until number 7. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We'll talk about that later. So I wanted to talk about training camps and an opportunity for injury prevention. And one of the things that they talked about was that, and this probably is no big surprise, but Super Bowl teams reported the least amount of injuries in training camp. So basically what you're saying is what you do at the very beginning of your season can put you further in the playoffs. So one of the things that they looked at in the NFL is the different types of um, preseason training models and how all of the 31 clubs or more, I don't know how many clubs, but they looked at 31 clubs, which I think might be all of them or almost all of them. But they looked at all the different types of training camps they did, and then they um, had the data from their injuries and how those um, compared to each other. And so, and the reason they looked at training camps is because the injuries in the NFL were the highest during training camp. If you were to break the season down, the most injuries occurred during the training camp. And that's, again, that's nothing new. I mean, the athletes have been off for a while and we don't know what they're doing in the off season. And so they come into camp sometimes not conditioned. So what they looked at was a ramp up model, which would be they start, with maybe 90 minutes, and then the next day give it 15 more minutes, and then the next day 15 more minutes, and then just gradually, increase the workout load. The other one they looked at was a high low, which they maybe started with 90 minutes, then went 120 minutes the next day, then back to 90 minutes, and back to 120 minutes. There was also a reverse ramp that some teams did that, and I would say that this is the coaches who say, oh, we're going to come in hard and work their butts off the first day and really weed out the week and see where we stand. So those are the ones that started with maybe 120 minutes. And then the next day went 105, 90, and then started over at 120. So kind of a reverse ramp up. And then there were some that were just a stable 120 minutes across every day. And I think that you guys probably won't be surprised, but the gradual ramp up models were the ones that had the least amount of injuries. So this is an opportunity for you to talk with your coaches and say, hey, look at your preseason training models. And if you have a coach maybe who comes in and thinks, let's just go hard the first day and really just, beat them up and get them in shape right off the bat, that's not going to put them into the postseason because that's when the injuries are going to occur. And as they've shown that the Super Bowl teams had the fewest amount of injuries during training camp. So I hope that kind of works in and gives some coaches some ideas and ADs things that you can talk about with your coaches as far as what to do next year. So do you have any questions on that or comments?
Well, no, I mean it's some people would say, well, boy, that just makes sense. You gradually ramp up, but you're absolutely right. You read about, whether it's high school, college, or pro, new coach comes in, very excited, hey, we're old school or whatever you want to call it. We're going to jump in and doesn't seem to have the payoff that the coaches were expecting. So it's good to have some hard data for that.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate is all the data that's coming out. So the next thing that I kind of want to talk about, which again, this is kind of a geek out thing for me, but one of the new things, the new technology they have in the NFL looking at concussions is they have a computer program that can look at every practice and whatever film is submitted to it, and every player on the screen that's practicing it can show how many impacts they had to their head. So then you can take that data and they can break it down into, okay, for the New York Jets, it looks like the offensive linemen are the group of players who are getting the highest amount of impact to their head. And so then those coaches can take that and say, okay, we need to swap up how we're having our offensive linemen practice because it's showing that they have the highest amount of impact to their head. Does that make sense? So they can break it down by position, they can break it down by individual players. It's really cool. And then the other thing that they do is that they rank by teams. So again, they can say, okay, the Seattle Seahawks have the lowest amount of head impacts during practice of all of the NFL, whereas the whatever team has the highest amount. So that's just kind of geeky information. I don't think that helps anybody, but I thought it was really interesting. And they talked about one player who was on a high impact team, got traded to a low impact team, when they rank them. And his head impacts individually, because they can also track that, actually went down by 21%. So it's showing that he had a lot more head impacts at this team because they just practice differently. So it's kind of interesting. But And the other thing they talked about was that the rule changes are helping. That there's lots of rule changes in NFL, and that trickles down obviously to college and high school, the different things that we've done to um, help lessen injuries. Um, in so 2015 to 17, there was 176 average concussions, and then from 18 to 20, that dropped to 130 average. And then from 21 to 23, it went back up a little bit, but they also in the NFL increased the amount of seasons. They went to an 18-week season, so it went up to 142. But just numbers that I think are interesting, and maybe some people out there look into it as well, or are interested in that as well. Um, I did want to talk. This will be something that's helpful to ADs and coaches also, football. Um, and I hope that most of you know this already, but there is a helmet ranking system, and it's super easy to find. There's actually a poster available if you want it, or a printout, but all you have to do is just Google helmet ranking system. Then you might have to put NFL in there, but I'm not sure. But and it ranks the all of the helmets that are basically out there into best, better, and not recommended. So that's something that you can look at on your, what you have at your school. And obviously, if you're playing with shut air XPs or one of the ones that are not recommended, you can look at the helmets that you have at your school and say, okay, as an athletic director, oh my gosh, we have those helmets. They're on the list as a not recommended. And that's a potential lawsuit if we have somebody have a head injury that, a detrimental injury because of that. So just something to know that's out there that can help us, one, help prevent injuries to kids by having better helmets and equipment, and to prevent lawsuits, which I know that's always an important thing that ADs need to look at. You look like you wanted to comment on that.
Well, again, I have not been a football coach for I guess going on 10 years, but as an AD, obviously, I was still very much involved in, helmet purchases and talking with our coaches and training. Um, the ranking or the labels or categories that you mentioned, that was something that was not around when I was coaching football. Basically, helmets were manufactured. Let's say there were four or five major ones. I know they were tested by some so-called national testing organization, and I think it was only like it was acceptable. It wasn't good or unusable. It was just okay. You've met the threshold of
Mm.
you can sell this. That's got to be, and I know I'm ambushing you with this question, but that's got to be disconcerting for a manufacturer to find out that their helmet is not rated at least safe, or let alone one of the best ones. Have you heard any feedback as an athletic trainer in your role about using or schools using helmets that were not certified safe?
Well, I would hope that they aren't, or at least they're phasing them out. So I mentioned Shutt, and I don't want to throw them under the bus. They have some that are there, some of their newer versions are going to be better. So my thought would be, without talking to the helmet providers or manufacturers, is that those who get graded at a lower ranking say, oh, we need to go back to the drawing board and either phase that helmet out and get a better version on the market, or so I think that it's helpful because, one, it's motivating them to do better with their product, um, or phase out, and if you have some of the older helmets in your program, then again, you need to phase those out and start bringing in the newer ones that have the better qualities. And unfortunately, it is a cost thing. Obviously, the best helmets are going to be the most expensive, I would imagine. But I think, especially with the secondary school level, we can kind of find a happy medium in there and get a good helmet that's not top of the line, top.
Right, absolutely.
So,
And
okay. So,
no, I was just going to say it just underscores again, um, for both athletic director and athletic trainer, hey, you got to be aware of, the equipment, helmets, bats, gloves, whatever it is, that impact your student athletes, or you could really, make, let's say, the wrong decision.
Yeah. And I hate, I worry, and I know you guys do as well. I worry about lawsuits a lot. I mean, as a medical provider, I worry about lawsuits. As, an athletic director, you guys are also worrying about lawsuits. So, but if I talk about lawsuits, I mean, obviously our first priority is taking care of kids, and we'll do everything possible to keep them safe, but we're also trying to prevent some lawsuits as well. I will say that I know that there's a lot of Rydell SpeedFlex out there, and I see a lot of high school programs using the SpeedFlex. And if you're one of those schools, they are ranked better, but not best. So I think that's perfect for a secondary school as far as, financially and being safe. So, okay. So moving on, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is often a controversial subject. And I have, a lot of coaches I know ask about this, and parents ask about this, and that's the guardian caps. So, a little history. In 2022, the NFL decided to look at these, and so they mandated some of their preseason. They mandated some positions to wear these preseason so they could try to get some data from it. Um, and from what they said is that concussions dropped 46% from the previous 3-year average, okay, at this one season. At the non-mandated positions, so players who weren't wearing a guardian cap, the concussions went up. Now, I love everything that the NFL is doing. They are really, trying to do so many things, and doing a lot to, to get safety a high rank for players. And this is trickling down to collegiate level and high school. But I want to clear up some myths about the studies that they've done. One, nobody has seen the actual published data that the NFL has done. This is just them telling us this. So we're not positive on where is this data and where's the research on paper that everybody can read. So first of all, let's back up. And I hope that most athletes and football coaches understand this, and parents as well, that helmets do not prevent concussions. Nothing can prevent a concussion. If a concussion is going to happen, it's going to happen. Okay. Helmets are there to prevent facial injuries, skull fractures, and other injuries to the head. But the concussion is from the movement of the brain within the skull. So anytime you can get a concussion from not even having any contact to your head. So that's what we need to make sure, that no helmet prevents concussion. So if a football coach is saying, hey, we're buying these new helmets because they're going to prevent concussions, that's false information. Do not tell your parents that, because that's not right. But it's good. These are great quality helmets that are going to help reduce our head injuries, is maybe a better way to say it. So let's look at the studies again. So in recent studies, there's only 4 research studies out there that are on the guardian caps, okay? 2 of them were based in a lab situation. So basically a helmet on a stick and getting hit with another helmet that's generated by a machine, so lab-based. And then 2 of those were player-based. Within the lab-based, those 4 research projects that are published, peer-reviewed, published in reliable sources, of the lab-based, what they found was that there was a decrease of impact forces, but the decrease was getting hit from the rear, so rear impact. And we just don't see getting hit in the back of the head that often in our, in sport, in football. And so that, I don't know how great that is, but they did have a decreased force. And the other thing is that they saw a higher decrease of impact forces with better quality helmets. So the better quality helmets helped with the impact force, whereas the lower quality helmets had a higher impact force. So that's pretty easy to figure out. Okay, now the player-based research, what they found is that there was really no reduction in accelerator impact and no significant differences. So when you actually put these helmets on players and have them play with them. And they had one of the studies had sensors in their mouthpieces to show what the impacts were, guardian cap versus no guardian cap. And so really there was nothing showing that there was a decrease in acceleration and impact. So while there's nothing negative about the guardian caps, there's no negative studies out there, there really isn't any firm proof that shows that they are going to help reduce the numbers of concussions. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Some things that, I know that I've heard of some donors coming in and saying, hey, we're going to donate $5,000 to your team because we want you to buy guardian caps for all the players. So it's not going to hurt. They're not hurting anything if you want to put your players in them. And maybe as we get more studies done, maybe we'll find out that they are helping to reduce the amount of concussions. So, but right now, really, there's no strict data showing that they are reducing concussions. And then quickly on that, some things to consider if you're looking at guardian caps. Okay. One, does wearing a guardian cap give our athletes a false sense of protection? All of a sudden, are we hitting harder and lowering our head because we have this guardian cap on and we're invincible now? Okay. The other thing that we see is when two helmets hit each other that don't have a guardian cap on, that small surface kind of skiffs off each other and they have a nice glide. So the impact force isn't as strong. Does that make sense? But when you put a guardian cap on one of those or both of those, it's not as smooth of a surface. So you get a difference in impact. And this is just me guessing. I don't know if there's research, but that just makes sense. Okay. Two, they talk about heat. Are they hot to wear? Extra weight. And that goes both ways. One, if you have an athlete who has a weak neck, a young athlete, and they're all of a sudden putting all that heavy extra weight on their head. Sometimes helmets are enough weight as they are. Will that be a problem? And then another one that we really need to look into is a lot of the helmet warranties. If you put anything on your helmet, it could void the warranty of the helmet. So again, we talk about lawsuits. Is that particular helmet that your athlete's wearing going to have a voided warranty if there's a guardian cap on it? Okay, so some positives. One, we talked about this already. There's really no negative outcomes that have been reported, so we're good there. Just they're not hurting anything. Two, it's going to keep your helmets nice and clean. You're not going to have as many scratches or other teams paint on your helmets, which I know the players like because that's kind of a sign of sign that they're hitting hard. And you look at the extra weight on the head. So one thing that I think is good with lowering the amount of concussions is having good neck strength. So maybe having those extra weight guardian caps on your head are going to help strengthen the neck and help with concussions, because if you have a nice strong neck, your head isn't jiggling as far, your neck muscles can take over, and so hopefully the theory is your brain isn't shifting inside the skull as much. But so basically it comes down to coaches, please coach proper tackling techniques, because that's what's going to help prevent concussions in your program the most.
Yeah, and you finished on the single most important point. I can still remember as a junior high school football player, my first experience with, let's say, padded tackle football, because you always played in the backyard. I remember the coach, and this was what they knew back then. I'm not, throwing my coach on the bus, but it was, hey, stick your face mask right in their numbers, lead with the face,
Yeah.
wrap up, roll your hips, all that stuff. And I remember the very first time I did it, and the coach is going, great, that was perfect. I'm just going, boy, my neck hurts a little bit. I don't know if I like this. And when we got to high school, we had a different coach, and he used a cue that I heard later on in college, that I used as a coach myself. He would say, put your face mask on the football. And the reason was that would put your shoulder onto the body. It would keep your head and face away from it. I don't know if they were worried about injuries or not, but he said, yeah, we want that face on the football because you're going to help pop that football loose. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was the right technique, maybe not for the right reasons, but it's something that I took with me as a football coach, the rest of my career, face on the football, shoulder on the body, eyes up, see your target, see what you're going to hit, all those things. Wow. Guardian, I never used them because they weren't around when I was still coaching. I allowed my head football coach in my last school to buy some with some of his fundraising money because I was the same thing. I said, "Hey, it looks cool, and I know school X, Y, and Z are doing it, but where's the data? That these things work. It might work, but are we just, are we spending all this money on, like another decal? Yeah, does it have the benefit?" And I love the point you made about when you're talking with parents. Hey, we got the highest rated football helmets available. It's not a guarantee against concussions. It's just we're putting our kids in the very best that we can afford. They still might break their arm. There's no arm breaking or Achilles tendon, proof format yet, just like there's no concussion proof stuff. Great stuff, Cari.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, you can follow up with that. Yes, football's a violent sport, and there are going to be injuries and head injuries possible. But the benefits of playing a sport is so much higher than the risk of injury that, that's what I always tell parents, would you let your kids play football? Absolutely. I let my kid play. I let my boy play football.
Mhm.
I think it's the best thing out there, to be involved in an athletic program. And so, even though we're out here and we're talking about injuries as athletic trainers and passing along information, we still are highly supportive of sport programs and want our kids out regardless of the risk of injury.
Right. And again, we're not bubble wrapping our kids at any time. Injuries can happen, while walking out the front door. But we're going to try to coach kids with good technique, provide them with great equipment, and help them experience, as you said, all the great things about a sport. Speaking of passing on information, Cari, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, whether it's an athletic trainer or an athletic director, what's the best way that they can get a hold of Cari Wood?
They can email me, and it's Carrie W 2288 at Gmail.
Okay.
So my high school number was 22, and my year that I graduated 88. Carrie W 2288 at Gmail.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing with our listeners. All the best in your continued gradual retiring. You're still doing some
I'm
really cool
trying.
things. But thanks again. We'll look forward to having you back on another segment.
Thank you so much.
For listeners, we appreciate you. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do these segments every week. Remember, it's a team of presenters. Cari's going to appear probably about once a month, but you can reach out to her. In the meantime, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast. Before we go, we do want to give a shout out to all of our great sponsors, Ohio University's Online Masters, Gipper. We want to thank Huddle and Hometown Ticketing. I want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive and Snap Raise. I want to thank Athletic Surveys. I want to say thank you to Home Campus and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Thanks to all of our great sponsors. If you're not using them, please check them out. You're going to be very glad you did. Thanks for listening to this segment of the Trainer's Room on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.